And welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Esther URT in Washington. With no safe and legal passage to Europe, more than 100,000 migrants and refugees made the dangerous journey across the Mediterranean Sea this year. Thousands crossed from Libya. And with the Libyan Coast Guard expanding its operations beyond its territorial waters, often threatening rescue ships, the trip becomes more treacherous. From the United Nations, VOA's Margaret Bashir has more.
Humanitarians say the Libyan Coast Guard is intercepting their ships in international waters, then returning African migrants back to war-torn Libya.
We have a huge concern about the situation.
In Libya, the migrants lack protection and are often detained indefinitely under extremely poor conditions. Detention centers are filthy and overcrowded, and aid workers have no access to them. Libya lacks a single unified government, rival militias operate with impunity, and Islamic State fighters, though weakened, still present a threat in the southern part of the country.
This is a country in war. In a country in war, there must be the humanitarian access. So it's an imperative, it's a humanitarian imperative.
The UN has also urged the Libyan authorities to provide safe, unimpeded aid access.
We do have concerns to make sure that all non-governmental organizations and all humanitarian workers are able to go about their work without fear and without hindrance.
Because of the Libyan Coast Guard's threatening posture, several aid organizations, including Doctors Without Borders and Save the Children, have recently suspended their rescue operations.
Of course, the consequences of this is that many other people will die in the Mediterranean, try to find a new life.
So far this year, nearly 2,400 people have drowned making the journey. Margaret Bashir, VOA News, the United Nations.
The government of Egypt is moving Cairo's decade-old leather tannery workshop from the narrow streets of old Islamic Cairo to a new complex on the outskirts of the city. The country is hinging export hopes on the new leather production city. Here's our report.
Just beyond the outskirts of Cairo, on a desert road to the Suez Canal, a sprawling industrial zone is coming to life. The new complex is part of a major expansion drive of a sector Egypt considers as one of its most competitive. The Trade Ministry has set an official target for leather exports to reach over $1 billion a year in 2020, from about $200 million a year currently. Egyptian exports were given a boost when Egypt floated its pound currency last year as part of an International Monetary Fund loan program. With projects like Rubiki, Egypt hopes to pull back capital that fled after its 2011 political uprising. In the fiscal year ending in June, it netted $8.7 billion in foreign direct investment and is targeting above $10 billion this year. The head of the leather tanning industry group, Mohamed Harbi, says around 220 tanneries are being relocated to Rubiki.
Imagine that even in these haphazard conditions, we are exporting 80 to 85% of our production to around the world. Can you imagine that we export this leather to other countries where it gets made into a product and sold back here? Try and imagine what could happen if we transformed the leather into the final product for the consumer. Why don't we do this instead of importing cheap and poor quality leather from other countries? We really care about the consumer.
The factories are moving under the orders of the government, which is paying for the transfer of machinery, constructing subsidized housing for workers, and facilitating low-interest loans for businesses looking to expand. At Magra Al Hayoun, workers dye animal hides in small ramshackle buildings without infrastructure for absorbing hazardous waste byproducts.
Egypt a long time ago was a leader in leather tanning, and for a period of time everyone wanted to grow, but there's no space.
Al Rawad, one of the country's 3 largest tanneries, will complete its relocation over the next month. The company is using the space to scale up and triple exports over the next year. By mid-2018, Rubiki should house the entire supply chain, from animal slaughtering to finished leather production, allowing global manufacturers to source materials and export final goods in a single location.
إن مع هذه النقلة النوعية
This important move from the Magra Layun area to this point will completely change the nature of the craft and the product.
Foreign investors can begin buying space in Rubiki in 2018, and the zone has received strong interest from Italian companies.
Also in Egypt, working to portray a more modern image of Islam, Al-Azhar University, Egypt's venerable seat of Islamic law, has been working to counter the violent versions being espoused by Islamic State, Al-Qaeda and other militant groups. Efforts by all Al-Azhar religious authorities to control the tenor of Islamic religious edicts and fatwas are part of the strategy which moderate forces are using to battle clerics espousing death and violence. Edward Uranian reports for VOA from Cairo.
Militant Islamic terrorists in Egypt have left a bloody trail of destruction. The loss of innocent lives from deadly bombings on churches and other attacks has led the government to denounce extremist Islamic clerics espousing bloodshed and violence. Hardline clerics like pro-Islamist Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi have been accused of issuing edicts or fatwas to justify the killings of police, army officers, and Christians. Qaradawi claims innocence. Islamic extremists have stepped up the violence since Islamist President Mohamed Morsi was ousted in July 2013. Many of his supporters were jailed and some tried for acts of violence. Egypt's top religious authority, Sheikh Ahmed Tayyib of Al-Azhar University, maintains that Islamic clerics who preach violence should not define Islam as a whole.
Islam must not be considered a terrorist religion just because of a few of its followers have hijacked some of its writings and misinterpret them to kill and shed the blood of innocent people.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has also called for reforming or renewing Islam so it projects a less violent image. One new way clerics with ties to Al-Azhar are trying to discourage extremism is by offering religious advice to writers at a fatwa booth in the Cairo metro. Sheikh Mohammed Zaki, the head preacher at Al-Azhar, tells VOA that while the core beliefs of Islam are immutable, its image or modern applications of it should fit the daily lives of people.
Each new generation benefits from the teachings of Islam, which remain unalterable as God presented them, but as flexible as the new shoots of a tree branch.
Al-Azhar has clamped down on extremist clerics in recent years by preventing them from preaching at mosques it controls, but as Zaki noted, the media which broadcast their message should also be sanctioned. Edward Uranian for VOA News, Cairo.
It's time now for a short break. Before we go, a reminder to visit our website, channelcv.com, for all the latest information around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, keeping girls in school in sub-Saharan Africa. A Ugandan startup is helping with girls' education, and they are helping the environment.